All right, let's see if we're working. Okay, so in this little video, I'm going to show you the basics of Blender's materials. So this is how to take your model, just your black and white model, your mesh, and assign different materials and make it look like different surfaces. So as a demonstration, I'm going to show you different types of materials you could make. So for example, a transparent glass, kind of a metal of any type, just a generic kind of plastic material, and skin. This is like a white person's skin, but just any kind of skin. So it's the principles to do this. So I'm going to turn all these off, turn that off, and open up just like a regular sphere that has no color. So this is just a sphere, UV sphere. Now I want to just make sure you know something. The viewport shading, there are different ways that you can look at your model. So first of all, before I start, I just want to make sure you see that this is my little screencast mouse. And I want to be sure that this is not being hidden by anything. Yes, I can left click, right click, and center click. And then if I put a key, you'll see the letter over there. So you can use this to see if I forget to say what I'm going to do, what I'm doing. All right, so here's a regular default sphere. And like I was saying, you have different ways of looking at an object. On the left here is just the wireframe mode that you see just the exact geometry, the mesh, the edges. We're not going to use that now because we're not modeling or anything. The second one is the one that you normally use, which is just the regular solid viewer. So you're just seeing the uncolored model. So if you're modeling, often you use this because it doesn't use a lot of computer power, so it's fast. This here is called the Look Dev mode or Material Preview, and this allows you to see colors. So as you're going to see in a second, for example, if I put this metal one on, you see it. If I put it on this one, it's just gray. So this middle one allows you to see the actual colors. And the very last one is the rendered view, which you can actually put all your nice lighting and take decent renders or good renders in Eevee or Cycles, which are the Blender render engines. But for now, we're just going to use the middle one, just so we can kind of see what we're doing and it doesn't take a lot of computer power or space. Okay, so we're going to go back to just our regular uncolored model. We're on our material preview, our look dev mode. So all of this happens in the shading tab. I go to the shading tab, make sure that my shading tab is on look dev, my middle one. And you can see, of course, it's still just a white sphere. There's nothing on it. That's because there's literally no materials. The computer, Blender does not understand what color this thing is. It doesn't know any, it has no material information. So we want to start by clicking this, which says new. Now we actually have this principal node, which I'm calling the mega node, but it's basically our base node, our box with all the plugins to allow us to have a material. So first of all, as I said before, by just moving around the slider, we can assign it immediately a basic color. It's just one color, but we're going to get to that after. So for now, let's just assign it like a blue color. Okay, so that's just the color. There's any range of colors, so I'll just make it blue for now. So this here, this space here, tells you both the hue, which is the color. So the hue is blue, purple, red, orange, yellow, green. That's the hue. It also controls the intensity. So the intensity means the grayness of it. If I put it all the way out here, it's totally saturated. If I bring it more in the middle, it's becoming more gray, and at the end, it'll just be with no color at all. So it's grayish blue, but or in this case, grayish purple, and now it's getting more and more saturated. So this controls the hue and the saturation. This over here controls the value, how light or dark it is. So this is a very dark saturated blue. It's a very light saturated blue. Okay, so I'll just keep it over here. The next slider over here is what is called metallic. This controls if it looks like metal or not. So as I slide it over here, it's going to start to reflect more like metal would. It's kind of hard to see because it's blue, but I'll put it sort of more where it's like sort of a neutral color. And you'll see that now it starts to look more like metal. If I take this off completely, it's just gray, but now it's starting to look like metal. And this here is what is called the roughness. So I'll keep it as my sort of metal color. The roughness is how shiny it is. If there's no roughness, it means it's completely smooth and shiny. That's why you can see this reflection of the lighting source here. You see this little house, it's completely reflecting the environment. If I put it over here, it's still metallic, but it's completely matte. There's no reflection. I put it in the middle, you have somewhere in the middle. So I can control how shiny it is like this. That is called roughness. So I'm going to take off the metallic, I'm going to put it back to sort of the blue color. And we'll make it really shiny. So this is just a plastic color. If this was completely matte, it would be all the way roughness. If it was completely glossy, it would be all the way no roughness, 0. And then I can control any middle value. So roughness is the shininess. Metallic is if it's metallic or not. See, now it looks like a shiny kind of bluish metal sphere. Take that off. And the color is the hue and intensity and the value, dark, light. Okay. We also have other tabs in there that we're going to look at in a second. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to put back my other plastic that I had. Plastic. Okay. So this is just the same thing, except for I'm going to show you now how to add variation in color. There is a very useful and easy thing that you can do in Blender, which is to add something called noise. Noise meaning a bunch of speckly dots. So imagine like if you look at a TV that is all kind of like just gray, like a fuzz pattern, where it's just black and white dots. That's called noise in the computer land. So if I plug just noise and I'm just going to plug it directly in, and you're going to see that this is going to look like black and white. If I wait till it loads. All right. So in this case, I'm going to just put, now it's not looking black and white. It's looking like a weird color. I'm going to turn off the color. Sort of. Okay, I'll do it like that. So it actually has a color already, but we're just going to imagine this. It's a bunch of dots. And the things you can do is you can use these dots in different sizes to make color variation. So as I see, if I go like this, the dots are so huge that I can't even see them. Now they're very large dots, little kind of blobs of color. If I go in like that, they become more smaller and more defined. Now they're kind of really tight. Now it's kind of just like a dots of color. So this is literally, there's no color here. It's just a pattern. It allows you to make just broken up color. So this is very useful for us. So I'm going to plug this into, I'm going to take I'm going to just keep this off for now. Let me show you how to get this. Unplug this, I'm going to delete it. Gone. Delete this, gone. Okay, to add these, you go like this, add, and I'm going to type in noise. Noise texture. Put this in here. And once again, I have the same blobs of color. Now I'm going to show you how to change things. The scale changes the size of the little blobs. The larger the scale, the smaller these blobs are. So now they're getting bigger and to the point you can't see them anymore. Now they're small blobs. The detail is basically how washed out they are. If I have little detail, they look kind of like low res. More detail gives them a bit more subtlety. Roughness is kind of similar. If it's all the way over here, it's very, contrasty. If I go here, it becomes more faded out. We'll keep the other ones for now. Actually, I'll show you distortion. Distortion literally distorts the dots. I can change slightly the shapes, which is kind of useful because we can use that for just doing different effects. This is a way of just giving broken up colors to things in a very quick and kind of easy way. So I'll put no distortion on for now. All right, now how are we going to actually make the color? The other extremely useful node in Blender is called the color ramp. So I go add color ramp. Now if I put the color ramp in here, it is 2 colors, black and white. Now basically the noise texture works by giving a black and white image. It didn't look like that before, but that's actually what's happening. It's just giving a black and white pattern. Again, smaller dots, bigger dots. Now the thing is I can choose the colors. So instead of having the black color here, wherever this black color is, I can choose to put whatever color I want. So let me choose blue over there. So I'm going to slide this up. It's very dark. I'm going to choose kind of like a similar blue that we had before. Now, if I slide this all the way over here, the whole thing's blue. But as I start to slide it like that, I'm getting that broken up color. Now I have a mix of blue dots, and in this side, it's white. So instead of white, I'll change it to something. I'll put it like a green. So it looks like now like a children's ball or something like that. I have blue dots, and I have wherever it was white, it's this green. So I can do things like if I want to put the dots to be very contrasty, I can put them more near each other, and now it looks like one of those children's balls that has these different colors. The further apart I put them, the less contrast there is, and it's more kind of blended together. If I want this to be mostly blue, I slide it like that. So now it's getting more and more blue and less green till it's completely blue. If I want this to be more green, same thing. I can go all the way there, and now it's basically all green, and now it's starting to have little globs of blue. If I remember that I can use the detail. So if I want the detail, I'll use the roughness. If I want this to be a bit more, I'll put it more like that. If I want you to see the dots more, I keep it like that. And you don't really see it that much here, but you'll see it in a second. Oh, that's what I want to do. See, you see in the detail, I have much more refined dots. So clearly you can use this for millions of things. Cloud patterns, we're going to use it for skin in a second. This is literally just a dot pattern. So I can use it to make color variation. I can even make 3 colors if I want to. I'll put this one being a red. And now I have 3 colors that I can use to break up this. Now it looks like some kind of planet like Mars or something like that. So all of these are ways of making basically color variations for free. It's very easy to do. Okay, so I have this crazy looking pattern. There's infinite ways you can use this. Okay, so I'm going to show you other ways of using the noise and the color ramp. So I'm going to go on to our metal ball. So I've made this ball, which is kind of a bronze color. I'm going to detach this first. So if I have I put this as a, sorry, I'm going to put that there. Okay, so I put a kind of a bronzy color, and I put the metallic all the way. Now if I adjust the roughness, it can become very shiny and reflective. Like if it's completely smooth, it reflects everything. If it's completely not smooth, it just looks like a matte ball. And if I have it in the middle, I can kind of change how shiny it is. I'll keep it like that. So it's like kind of a bronzy kind of metal ball or something. Now, what I can do is instead of using the noise texture and color for the color, I can actually use it for the roughness. I'm going to show you what this does. This allows me to make different areas of shininess on the ball, like it's an old ball and some parts are less shiny and some parts are more shiny. So let me put this how it's supposed to be. Remember that in roughness, if I have the entire thing being white, it's completely rough, meaning it is completely matte, not shiny. If I have the entire thing being black, it's completely shiny. But as I adjust these, now I have different patterns of shiny and not shiny, so it looks more like a rusty, old kind of metal. And I can change this so it's not quite so contrasty. Instead of black, I can make it more like that. I can make 2 colors of gray, and so now it's more subtle. I can also play with my detail, my roughness, so that I have more subtlety. It's kind of smaller now. These are ways that you can make, for example, metal look like it's sort of old or aged. Put this back to being darker. And now I have, wherever it's black, it's going to be very shiny and reflective, and then you have some areas that are kind of maybe like older and smudged. So another way of adding a lot of detail for something that's very simple. Okay, so the final thing I wanted to show you is, well, 2 things I want to show you. One is glass. All right, so let's go to glass here. And I don't know what happened to my glass. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to go to my rendered view, my Eevee view. So this is a glass. How do you make something look transparent? Well, the secret is it's all in this. Close all this. You have your base color, you have your metallic, all this stuff, but you also have all these other ones. One of them is called transmission. If I put transmission to 0, my material is opaque. If I put transmission to 1, my material is completely transparent, and I have sort of in between. Although in transmission, generally, it's either transparent or not. So this is now totally transparent. I also put my roughness all the way down, so it's totally shiny. Now I can make it transparent and kind of frosted. So now it's kind of, you see it's transparent, but it's a little bit frosted, like rough glass. As I go less rough, it's completely transparent. It reflects everything in the scene. It reflects all my lights. I have like kind of a forest light, so it's reflecting that. Again, a little bit less rough, and now it's kind of like a frosted glass. So this is how you make things transparent. It's the transmission. A couple other things with the transparency. If you want something to be refracting, which is what happens when you have glass over a surface, you're going to click this. If I don't click this, it's still transparent, but there's something that will allow you to do with these things that's called screen space reflections. It's going to allow me to refract, which I'll show you what that means in a second. I'll put my plastic on there. Okay, so I have my glass thing. I'm going to move this here. I'm going to move this a bit forward. So when you look through glass, you have what's called refraction, which kind of distorts the thing behind it. Like if you put a fork in a glass of water, the fork looks bent. That's called refraction. I can control how much it distorts it by this, which is over here. It says IOR. This is called the index of refraction. As I move this, it's distorting more what it sees behind. Water, I believe, is 1, and as I go up, I think the cornea of your eye is a little bit bigger than that. It changes how much it distorts the object behind. So you see, all this is changing is how much it's distorting what is behind the glass. Very useful for a lot of things because different objects have different levels of refraction. Glass versus water versus the cornea of your eye, plastic, they all have different indexes. So that allows you to change the refraction. So that's the transparent material. Finally, I will show you some fake skin material. So here is a skin material. I'll take this off. So here what I did is, let's look at the materials here. I'm going to detach everything. Detach all that, detach all that, detach all that, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the first thing is, if I don't have anything else, I just have this base color. I just made like a kind of a generic sort of yellowish base color. Of course, that could be whatever I want it to be. I can make it different. So this is just like a kind of a light flesh colored ball. But what becomes interesting is where you use the noise texture and the color ramp. So I had a noise texture here, exactly like before, color ramp exactly like before. I'm going to plug it in. And I put 2 different colors. I put kind of a base flesh kind of color, like a light Caucasian flesh. And I also put like a red, like a lip color, because your skin is very broken up. This allows me to make breakups. So you see that here there's little blotches of red. I can change how blotchy they are and how subtle it is by using my little roughness here. See, now I can make it kind of like, okay, it's blotchy but not that blotchy. And of course by using these sliders here. If I do this, it's just blend it all together. If I do this, I have more flesh color. If I do this, I have more red. I can make it obviously very blotchy, like it's a guy who has an infection or something. And I can control the little subtleties of the red. Now, when I do models and stuff of humans, I have a bunch of these different shaders that have all these breakup patterns, so it looks more like skin. So that's just the color. So right away, we already have more of a fleshy kind of a look because it's organic looking. Now, the roughness. Actually, before we get to roughness, let's get to what is called a bump map, which is extremely useful. So again, I have my noise texture node here. I just had another noise texture. By the way, when you have these nodes, I can easily duplicate them by just doing Shift D. Now I have a new noise texture node. So I made this one. I brought this one by doing Add Noise. But once I have one, I can just click on one, Shift D, and pull it out. Now I have 2. So that's what I did. I duplicated my noise, and I now have another one. I can do whatever I want. I also duplicated my color ramp. So I have 2 color ramps. So when you do these shaders, you can just make noises and color ramps and just duplicate them a bunch of times. All right, so let's see what this is doing. I also took a bump node. I clicked add and I wrote bump, like bumpy. Took that bump node, okay? And that's what this is, bump. Now bump node means it's going to make the surface look bumpy. So I have my noise texture, and I plugged it into this bump node, and I'm going to plug it into the node that is called normal over there, normal. Now we'll look what happens when I plug it in. It's going to take a second because it has to load. Suddenly I get these bumps, and suddenly it looks a hell of a lot more like skin. Now, of course, I can adjust the bumps however I want. I can make it look very, very rough. Now it looks like an orange or something, really crazy rough. I can make it look not so rough. I'm adjusting now. This is the distance, which means how far the bumps go from the surface. And this is the strength, which means like how much you see that bumpiness. So I'll kind of make it not that strong. Now, of course, I have the scale, so I can adjust the scale. I can make it, I'll do a very crazy bumps here, as you can see it. If the scale is down, I have larger, lumpy looking thing. If I do the scale higher, I get smaller and smaller bumps, which is probably more what I want because that looks more like skin. And of course, the roughness and the detail do the same thing as before. It gives a little additional detail to it. So I'm going to put the distance way down. If I hold shift, by the way, I can control it a little bit better. Keep it kind of maybe like that. And now I have something that looks more like skin. Do it maybe a little bit more strongly so you can see it. Okay, now I can also take this exactly the same noise texture and I could just plug it directly in, plug it directly into the roughness. So I'm going to get rid of this so you don't have to look at this for a second. If I take the noise texture, I can plug it directly into the roughness, and now I get that different shiny and matte areas from the same bump map. So instead of everything being shiny, some of it's shiny and some of it's not. It gives me a look of kind of a sweatiness. I'm going to show you I can exaggerate this. So once again, if I take my color ramp, and I plug it in between these things, I can now control how exaggerated the difference in shiny and not shiny is. Let's make it super exaggerated and make it look like it's like a sweaty guy. Hold on. If I do like this, you really see there's areas that are very shiny and areas that are not, and they're in dots. You see, it looks almost like an infected skin, super shiny and matte. And as I move them away from each other, the effect is much more subtle. Now, I'm just using the same bump map, but I could just, I'm using the same noise, but I could just, if I want it to be slightly different than the bumps on the skin, I could just do that. That's not what I want to do. Hold on, let me do this again. It has to load, of course, and it will load. Come on. Okay, so let me just re-plug this in. That's not what I want to do. I'm going to undo that. Okay. Unfortunately, when you do these things in Blender, every time you plug something in, it has to recalculate it so it sees what it's supposed to look like. All right, now that that's plugged in, I'm going to actually make the noise texture thing, sorry, the roughness thing a little bit smaller so it's not quite so obvious. All right, so now I have some little variations. All right, and so that's how you can make something look more organic. Of course, I could do whatever I want with that. This just looks like a random ball of skin, but of course you have infinite control. So once again, I'll just show you all the three of them. Or sorry, the four of them. Oh, no, another plastic. And the original sphere. That's not what I want. Huh. I don't really, oh yeah, that one. Yeah. So metal, glass, skin, organic material, and just random plastic. One last thing I wanted to show you was something called subsurface scattering. Skin is translucent, which means that you can see through it to some extent. So if I have, for example, a light in back of my ear, you'll see that it's red inside. There's a function on this which is called subsurface scattering. I'm going to turn it on right now. You'll notice as I turn this on, the ball is getting a bit more reddish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on a backlight. A backlight meaning like a light that's coming from the back. I'll turn the rest of these things off just so you can focus on the skin. Okay, so I have my backlight there as if it's from behind an ear. Notice that now it's reddish as I go. And the more I crank this thing, the more red it becomes. If I turn this off, it's just like you don't see any reddishness. This is called subsurface scattering, which means that light is penetrating the surface. So this is here. And again, in your mega node, you have a thing that says subsurface. I'm going to close everything else. Subsurface. If I open this up, the weight means how much you see this effect. I'm going to crank this weight up, and then you're seeing the ball is starting to become more kind of like translucent. Now, the reason why it's red is because I have these sliders here. I can control what color comes through. If I do this, it's going to be like translucent and kind of reddish on the inside. Keep it like that. If I turn that off, I do this, it's going to be translucent and greenish on the inside. And if I turn this off like this, translucent cyan. So I'll keep it a bit red for kind of human skin. And so you see that I can control how much, and I can also use the scale control to control how much of that reddishness is coming through the ball. But of course, it's extremely useful for skin and things that are organic. So if I turn that backlight off, you don't see it so much. It's more obvious when you have backlight. So that is called subsurface scattering. It's kind of the secret to making things look like real skin because it's slightly translucent. Now it's not just skin, many objects are slightly translucent, and a subsurface scattering allows you to fake that in 3D. All right, I hope that was useful.